Game Freak dropped a bombshell on us this week by announcing a new mobile game that lets you capture and battle Pokémon in the real world by using augmented reality. Pokémon GO is its name, and it works in conjunction with a little watch-like device that alerts the player when Pokémon are nearby. So you'll be walking around in the real world, and the watch will beep, and you can pull out your phone and catch the Pokémon that's hiding around the corner from where you're standing, which is so cool! Miyamoto even came out on the stage during its announcement and said it reminded him of Pokémon Snap, which, interesting little comment. But Pokémon GO launches next year, but it is getting a closed beta this winter. Before we get into more details about the game and who's making it, I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are.
So I keep seeing people share posts like on social media, like Facebook or Tumblr, or things like that, of saying like kids in schools all across America are going to be like, sorry teacher, I got to go catch Pokemon, and just walk out of the classroom.
10-year-old says, Mom, I'm leaving home. I'm going on a nationwide adventure to catch Pokemon.
My journey has begun.
But I mean, that hits on a point that this is really a very modern and much better realization of the original vision behind what Pokemon was than any of its current games, than any of its older games, obviously, because those were hugely limited by technology of the time. But, I mean, this is really, really so cool.
I like what you said about the older games being limited by technology, because that really hits on what this does for me, and that is, the real limitation of the Pokemon games is that the Pokemon game worlds are so limited themselves, whereas now you kind of get that sort of... I mean, everybody probably imagined when they were playing Pokemon as kids that, oh, I'm going to go walk in the woods and I'm going to find myself some bug Pokemon or something like that. And that's a feeling that you only kind of replicate in the games. It's not something that's really fully present. But now, you have kids that can go out and they can really discover, a Caterpie in their backyard or a Pidgey in their neighborhood or something like that.
Alex, you complained a lot in the past about recent Pokemon games not having very good level design when it comes to dungeons. So I just picture you intentionally getting lost in a cave so that you can relive that Pokemon experience.
Right, or walking around my office and then there's like a Voltorb falling from the ceiling.
Oh man!
I mean, what if the world of Pokemon has gotten to the point where they don't put a lot of effort in anymore? The best thing they could do is put Pokemon in the real world.
They don't even need to design
a world. Yeah,
we've talked before about how Pokemon used to have this heart where it was about making it feel like these creatures could exist in the real world, like you are exploring your own neighborhood and your own region and finding these whimsical monsters and experiencing this real Pokemon journey and this little infusion of fantasy into the world that you already know. And that's exactly what Pokemon GO does. I mean, that's, we've said before, games like X and Y are falling away from that. The monster designs are ridiculously over the top. The new Zygarde stuff, which we'll talk about later, oh my god, don't even get me started. But, I feel like the main series has really been losing that special touch, and Pokemon GO is not only bringing it back, it's bringing it back better than ever. It's bringing it back realized in a way that when this is the ultimate dream come true for a Pokemon fan, and it's actually happening. It's the wildest dream that anyone ever could have said, and 2 weeks ago, if anyone had suggested this, they would have sounded like an absolute nut job. Total blind optimism, never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen, and here we are, we're getting Pokemon GO beta this winter. It's coming out next year. I mean, man, what a time to be alive!
What's interesting to me is how many mobile games do you see? Mobile games are usually cheap or free. How many mobile games do you see that are sold with a mandatory peripheral? And what franchise other than Pokemon? Is the peripheral mandatory? Well, maybe it's not.
I think it's optional. It's optional.
But
I mean, certainly if it's mandatory, no one's going to want to play this game.
Well, I was going to say, what franchise other than Pokemon could even convince people to buy a peripheral for a mobile game?
Right.
Just for one mobile game, too.
Yeah.
There's no promise that it'll be useful for anything else.
And I mean, I've been seeing people share... Ben, you said people are talking about it on social media. I've been seeing people talking about it who I've never even known to like video games. And they know Pokemon, and they miss Pokemon, and they're talking about it, and the convenience of having it on a phone, and the idea that it's in the real world rather than in a video game. I'm seeing this touch so many more people than the games do, because... I mean, I think in part because when older generations were younger and they experienced Pokemon as kids, that's what they loved about it, was the idea that you could see, that you could imagine these things in the real world. And now that that's coming to life, it's bringing them back in and getting them reinterested in the franchise. I mean, part of that is obviously nostalgia, but another part of that is it's something that the modern Pokemon games can't do. They can't say, hey, 25-year-olds, remember Pokemon? Come get back into it, because the mechanics are dated, the technology limits the Pokemon experience, but this new thing with all the GPS and all this crazy stuff, I mean, it's attracting the very people that the main games have been losing.
And it wouldn't have been possible if this weren't a mobile game, because, as you said, it uses the GPS and location tracking, and so in a way, it's almost like it suits Nintendo's whole strategy of using hardware and making games that can only work on that hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. The one concern I have so far is that we really haven't seen anything for gameplay. So, the idea is fantastic, but, I want to see how it's applied before I get, too hyped to go out and be a Pokemon trainer.
Well, yeah. I think the nice thing about that, though, is they already have a lot of systems in place. For like trading, for example, is something that they've already done online. That wouldn't be something that would be difficult to adapt to a mobile platform. Same with the battle system. They've already done a touch-based interface even for battles. They can just port all that stuff straight over and not really tweak it very much.
Yeah, but if the Pokemon look ugly, if the animations are bad,
yeah.
if it's
and also, I kind
of
wonder about the battle system and the level-up system and, how they'll handle all that. I imagine it might be a different system that's more tailored for an on-the-go... Well, I mean, most Pokemon games are on the go, but still, mobile experiences are expected to be, a little quicker, a little easier to pick up and put down than handheld experiences. So I don't imagine that this will just be a straight port of the, level up and battle mechanics, but I don't know. We haven't really seen enough to determine that.
I mean, I agree with you on that. Let's talk about that trailer, though. My God. What a good job. Nintendo, that's how you market things.
Yeah, and that's how you explain new concepts in particular. Like they didn't really need to go have this voiceover guy tell me what's going on. They just have little snappy little phrases. The visuals really tell you the story more so than anything that's in the text. The
story of fighting Mewtwo as a raid boss in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, I get the impression that the real world experience won't quite be like that.
No, God, no.
I doubt it'll even be a raid battle. It'll probably just be some kind of timed event sort of thing. But still, the visual representation of a virtual concept was just pretty much perfect. This is, like you said, this is what Nintendo advertising needs to look like.
Yeah, and Nintendo has been saying the line quite a bit lately that it's not, the problem isn't that we have a bad product. Our product has great value. It's just hard to understand. And like you guys said,
it's not hard to understand. Yeah. You just suck at communicating it. But now here they are communicating it really, really well.
Yeah.
So awesome job all around. I'm really looking forward to seeing, where this goes and how they handle this in the coming months and as it launches and post-launch. But super exciting. I'm so glad we have something overwhelmingly positive to say about Nintendo right now.
Yeah.
I feel like our show started at a time where there wasn't a whole lot of great stuff that could be said for them. And now, I mean, I feel the 7-year-old inside me just trying to break free and just die of happiness.
Oh, and that's another great thing about this is one of their first real mobile pushes, and so this is something that is going to reach a lot of 7-year-olds. They don't have to have a Nintendo product already. This can be their first exposure to Pokemon,
and it could potentially encourage them to, I don't necessarily want to say upgrade since this sounds like a really cool experience, but to try, the 3DS Pokemon.
Yeah, I think this is going to be better than the core games, honestly.
Yeah, and we'll see. Maybe this is going to be so deeply integrated with the next Pokemon games that'll be something that'll be easy for them to do.
Yeah. So, man, I'm more excited about this than I have been about Pokemon in at least a decade, probably more.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And that's saying a lot because I have been so cynical and bitter about the direction that Pokemon has taken that with just a 1-minute trailer and an announcement that came out of absolutely nowhere in the middle of the night, they managed to successfully excite me that much.
Yeah.
Man. So, this game is being made by the Pokemon Company with Niantic Labs mostly. Niantic Labs is a startup that shot off from Google and became an independent studio. Nintendo's also involved with it, but it's not one of the games from Nintendo's partnership with DNA, so Nintendo's making 5 mobile games plus Pokemon Go.
For those of you who don't know anything about Niantic, they're the ones behind the popular mobile game Ingress, which is also a game that relies on location tracking. So if you're worried that they're not going to be able to pull off a game that uses this concept, they've done it before, and they've done a pretty bang-up job. Ingress is this sort of sci-fi exploration game with a really deep lore revolving around 2 warring factions who try to take control of real-world locations called portals. So it's not quite the same thing as Pokemon Go, but at least you know that they really know how to use location technology.
Yeah, and you can try Ingress yourself if you're interested in getting a better idea of like how this kind of thing might work.
Yeah, it's great to see Nintendo, or more so the Pokemon Company in this circumstance, but teaming up with a partner that knows what they're doing in order to get into a new style. They're not trying to just do it all on their own. They're finding someone that knows how to do it, because that's been kind of a weak point for Nintendo, is experiences that have to be that are heavily online or heavily social. Like this is not the kind of thing that you would expect them to be able to pull off by themselves. So it's great to see them working with a proven partner.
And a Western partner.
Yeah. I was going to get there too, because so many of their attempts to integrate sort of new technology is very Japan-centric. Like, for example, Street Pass. Street Pass is something that doesn't really work in the West, where we don't really have that whole train commuter culture outside of the very few urban areas that have a really good infrastructure. But this is a Western approach to a mobile location-based game.
And it's going to be way better than Street Pass when E3 comes around.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, I
could see them going all out at E3.
I'm not sure if I want to think about... I mean, it could be really amazing. It could be such a nightmare.
I'm hoping it means, like, short lines, because everyone will be out trying to catch a shiny Mewtwo while I'm playing the newest Zelda game.
Nobody's doing their jobs at E3, they're just playing Pokemon Go.
I want to know what this means for Pokemon Symphony.
That is really interesting. I want to move on, but that's a really interesting question. They might do some really cool stuff with that.
Hello everybody, thank you for listening to this Nintendo Week clip, NWC. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to us here on YouTube for more highlights and discussion videos from Nintendo Week podcast, or subscribe to us on iTunes for weekly breakdowns of all your Nintendo news, discussion segments on subjects, games, and more, and tons of other features. Thanks for listening, and we will see you tomorrow with another NWC.